Welcome to the Modernize or Die podcast, CFML News Edition, where we keep you up to date with everything going on in the ColdFusion community. We'll share the latest news on events, releases to engines, frameworks, libraries, and tools, as well as spotlighting quality content from the community. Welcome back to Modernize or Die podcast, CFML News Edition. It is September 8th, 2020, and hopefully everybody had a great holiday yesterday for those who were lucky enough to have it off. How about you, Eric?
It was really nice. Had a nice little family barbecue, so enjoyed the time off.
Very cool. I did too. Had a lazy day. I don't usually get too many of those, so it was good to have one. Cool. Well, let's start off by thanking our sponsor, Ortus Solutions. So thanks to Ortus Solutions, we're able to do this podcast. They fund basically half this podcast with our help from our Patreon supporters. And if you want to say thank you back to them in a financial way, you can thank them on Patreon with Patreon support, or you can go to some of the trainings that we provide. So we have 2 ColdBox virtual workshops coming up in October, and CFCasts is releasing free and paid content every week. So a lot of ways you can help give back to Ortus. And hopefully you guys enjoyed the podcast. And so just another way to say thank you to them. As I mentioned, we have Patreon supporters as well. They're funding about 60% of our podcast now. And so far, we got a lot of great supporters, and we'll be mentioning them at the end of the show as well. If you want to find out more about supporting Ortus through Patreon, you can go to patreon.com/Ortus Solutions. Okay, Eric, let's get on with the news. What's first on our list today?
First up is some releases that we had. Fusion Reactor 8.5 was released this last week with a bunch of improvements and bug fixes. Noticed some things about Java 14 and some of the libraries that you might, Java jars that you might see in there, like Jedis, as well as some CF thread stuff. Yeah,
and one thing I really like about Fusion Reactor release notes is they're very thorough, very detailed. You can see if there are improvements or bugs, and they have all the versions going back. So if you're looking at possibly upgrading from an older version, definitely check out the release notes. They got a lot of details, and you can see what you're missing.
Yeah. Hey, Gavin, just a note, the chat says that you're much quieter than I am. So if you can work on that while I go to the next one, that would be great.
Yeah, sorry. I got to step into the microphone a lot. Sorry about that, guys.
No worries. Charlie in the chat says one of the great things in 8.5 is Fusion Reactor will now track them in the UI threads in the UI like different requests, so you can actually step into a specific thread and see the performance there, which is an awesome new feature.
Yeah, I've been loving Fusion Reactor. I had to do some troubleshooting with a client recently and really enjoying it. It saved my butt, I'll tell you that much.
Awesome. Next up, release of the Lucee Spreadsheet library. This is 2.11. This is a way to handle spreadsheets, Excel files inside of Lucee without having to install an extension. And looks like they got some support for a little bit more control over the data types when adding rows, and also some hex color support. So I know we use this library in a previous job. It is fantastic. So if you're missing any of the Adobe functionality of the CF Spreadsheet tag, this library will take care of you.
Yeah, it's nice to have a library as well without having to go to an extension. A lot of people like to keep it simple, and this is definitely an easy way to do that when you're going from, project to project without having too much control over the server.
Right. Some news coming up. We have a webinar you're giving, Gavin. Tell us about that.
Yep. So September 25th, I'm going to be doing Modern ColdFusion, no more copy paste. And so the whole idea of this one is basically looking at different ways to improve your code. Basically, dry code, don't repeat yourself. A lot of people are sort of build their code and they try to be smart about it, but we have a sort of series of best practices and some tools and to make your life easier there too. So we're going to go through that, look at some of the ways you might do it, and a lot of people are probably doing a lot of these things already, maybe using functions and CFCs or stuff like that. But we try and go a little further and try and really help you clean up your code and make it life easier when you're maintaining one project or lots of projects, because there's definitely ways to improve that. So we thought it'd be kind of interesting, and then looking at some of our tools, and we'll mention ForgeBox as well, and look at different things like using Git endpoints versus storage code inside of ForgeBox. So we'll have some numbers and some stats. So it'd be worth coming checking it out. So
That's awesome. Great. So that's Friday, September 25th at 11 a.m. Central Time.
Yep, and you can register now. The link is up on our webinars page, so ortusolutions.com/events/webinars, and you can get links to all our old recordings there for the other webinars on CFCasts as well.
That's right. Speaking of CFCasts,
yep, we have a new one.
Yeah, we have a new series up. If you've been following along, there's been regular releases to our ColdBox Masterclass, but this week we have a new series done by Grant about configuring your CFML servers with CFconfig.
Yep, so this time you can learn about CFconfig and don't have to listen to Brad.
And I've watched these two videos, and Grant does an excellent job. More videos will be published to it, but you can catch the first two on CFCast right now as a subscriber.
Yep, and one of the good things too about having other people do your videos, a lot of times when you build something, you know how it works back, front, and sideways, and you kind of assume everybody else knows the same. So having somebody else newer to it, they'll sometimes cover the things that you might run into when you're first starting with it too. So I like this, and I know you like the same thing when other people present on Quick.
Yeah, in QB, yep.
Yep, for sure. So that's really good to see, and thanks, Grant, for doing that. And yeah, lots more content coming your way. Okay. So let's get on to conferences.
Right. We have a couple workshops that we'd like to announce for October. We are bringing back the 1-2 punch of the ColdBox Zero to Hero and the ColdBox Hero to Superhero workshops. These are both 2-day workshops, and you can get the details of it on our events page.
Yep, we're actually ahead of the schedule here. They're getting the events up on the events page, hopefully today or tomorrow. They are up on Eventbrite if you can find them there, but we'll be getting that information out to you really soon. The same information as previously, like Eric said, the 2-day workshops, and they do build on top of each other. So if you have taken the Zero to Hero, the Hero to Superhero is the next step. If you haven't, you can get them both in October. And they're going to be 2 days. We usually do them Thursday, Friday, and we're going to fit them in October because obviously it's going to be pretty action-packed there in November and December, so we're trying to get some workshops in. I know Eric's trying to schedule another quick one, too, because he wants to get that out here. So
yeah, we hope to get you some dates on that soon. But yes, the fabled quick workshop is incoming.
Yeah, a lot of people asking for it, so we're working on getting that out there. It's just scheduling around everything is tough these days, and yeah, I know the start of school has really hit hard, and so we're trying to give people time in September to get used to that.
Right. As always, our loyal podcast listeners can get 10% off of their registration with the coupon code podcast10. So if you go sign up for one of these workshops. Now, Gavin, are these going to be on the same weekend or different weekends? Do we know?
Yeah, they're going to be about 2 weeks apart. That way, hopefully, for those who want to get both done, I know some in the past we've had a couple people do both workshops. So we're going to do the ColdBox Zero to Hero, and then about 2 weeks later, I think we're going to do Hero to Superhero. I think that's the second week and the fourth week, but I'm not sure. We're just, checking everything, and they're getting them all set up. So I don't want to give the wrong date out on here. So we should have the pages up very soon up on the Ortus site, and then you can basically register. But we just want to make sure you guys are knowing they're coming so you can get planned, maybe talk to your boss and, get permission. So just don't forget they're coming soon.
That's awesome. Cool. Other conferences, we've talked about jconf before. This is the month for jconf on September 30th. It's a Java conference, free online, 9 to 4 Central Time on September 30th.
Yep, so a lot of good speakers there. Some of the ones that, we're big fans of, like Venkat. So there's quite a few out there. Brad recognized a lot more speakers than I did, but that's because he goes to DevNexus a lot. So definitely check it out. As Eric said, it's free, so worth looking at for sure.
Yeah. Worst case scenario, if you don't like it, you can just close that browser tab,
Yep, exactly. But it's nice to see, especially when you're looking at the Lucee code too. I know we've been talking about diving into Lucee. We'll talk more about it later, but getting some eyes into the Java code, it's a good thing too. So
yeah.
Okay, we also have CF Summit 2020, and that's going to be in November 17th to 19th. It's going to be online, and you can sign up at cfsummit.adobeevents.com. And again, this one is free too. So no excuse not to go.
That's right. And also, their speaker application website is still up. I don't know if that means they're actually taking submissions, but I confession time. I just submitted my talks, and we'll see if they take them or not. But they went through at least.
Yep.
So it might not be too late for you.
Yep. So worth a shot if you want to speak. And again, it's a good conference. We got a lot of great content, a lot of great speakers, and I'm looking forward to catching up virtually with everybody. Obviously not in person, which is a big downer, but current conditions, we can't do much about it. So. And then always they have great workshops as well with their conference, and they are doing the Adobe ColdFusion Certification online. So you don't even have to wait for the conference. You can sign up online now, and we have information on that. Well, there's a blog post about it, and there's also a registration link as well. So the certification is really successful. They've had over 100 people take it, and it's 50 hours of online videos, and they have a nice level of videos, and you're going to learn something for sure. And hopefully at the end of it, you can get your certification. And when you're on the coldfusion.adobe.com site now, you even have specialist next to your name. So you got a little tag and everything.
Ooh, that's fancy.
Yep. So it's a cool certification, and it's, for a long time they didn't have it. I think since like ColdFusion 9 was the last time they offered it. So it's good to see it back, and it's doing well. And they've got it online now. So trying to work with the current environment. So yeah, so go find out some more and maybe register for that one too. Okay, CF Camp, we're probably going to be not having one this year. We haven't heard anything about it, and with the current situation, it's understandable. So we do have another conference that might be going on, though. The Ortus Solutions last year did the first ever LATAM conference in Latin America, and so we're looking at doing an online version. So for those Spanish speaking, you may enjoy a 1 day of content or even 2 days of content. We're still finalizing details and dates and times, but in December, we're looking to possibly have an online conference there. So that'll be pretty cool.
That is really cool. And that reminds me, if I can steal some time, we've been working on the product side of CFCast lately, adding in internationalization. So right now on the site, you can view it in both English and Spanish, but we're also doing work on the back end to have videos hosted in multiple languages. And it's been a really fun experience, and we hope that can, further the works of Into the Box LATAM. We can put on some video courses for people that speak Spanish, and who knows, expand to more languages in the future as well.
That's very cool. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of great power in internationalization, but being in the States, we don't usually do too much around that. So
it's a shame.
Yeah, all our European developers always asking us questions about it. I'm like, yeah, I know a little bit, but yeah. So it's pretty cool. And I know the CBI18N module? And then obviously we're doing it with inertia in the front end and everything too. So that's probably why you recommended the internationalization ally for VS Code last week.
Yeah, that was a personal find that changed our lives. So it's been really nice. And yeah, we're using inertia and Vue IETN. So
very cool. I see Will just updated CBI18N today. Yep. And he's one of our big users. Like I said, the European customers are doing a lot with it because they have to. And there are a lot of contributors helping making it better too. So thank you, everybody. Okay, let's get into our blogs, tweets, and videos of the week. So we actually got quite a few.
This first one's pretty fun.
Yeah.
So regular listeners of the show are going to remember that Brad was on here complaining about some query performance and kind of his workarounds and what was happening. Well, some of the good news was there was a client who sponsored his work into improving Lucee's query support, and he has a pull request up with some charts and graphs about time. And Gavin, it's pretty astounding.
Yeah, I just pull
I think
up
the biggest one I think the biggest change I saw was something where Lucee before this pull request took 12 seconds to do a query, and after took 1.4 seconds.
Yeah, there's some pretty big numbers here. Yeah, this one here. So the select distinct department from employees. Yeah, almost 12 seconds before, and now 1.3 seconds.
And that's synchronous. You can get even faster using async as well. So it's pretty impressive. We'll put a link to his tweet, which also has the ticket and the performance review. Basically, like he said, he retooled it to make it so it does all of these common query operations straight in Java. There's not dumping out to hypersonic SQL as much. So some pretty awesome stuff here. I put the tweet in, and I'll also put the link to the ticket because that has more information as well. But we're very grateful that Brad could do that, and grateful for awesome clients who sponsor works to improve the engine for all of us.
Yeah, for sure. And it's interesting seeing the numbers too. Like, Adobe was pretty fast on certain things.
Yeah.
And then even after Brad, cleaned them up, it's still faster. But in other times, the asynchronous one is slower than the synchronous one for that. So
async can be funny that way.
Yeah. So, but yeah, it's kind of interesting, and we'll definitely share that with you guys. And but it's just good to see, like I said, Brad dove into the code and got playing around, and gets obsessed a little bit, and yeah, hopefully everybody can win now. So hopefully the pull request gets merged soon, and we'll be using it and testing it out ourselves. Next up, we actually have something from Tony Junkies. So he was working with Adobe's PDF tools, the Java SDK, and Alicia actually put him onto this. And so it's kind of a fun one to play with here. So he's got a repo out there with some examples and everything. But let me just share my screen for those watching. And so, yeah, so he's basically, built it into CFML and sort of started using them for different things. And he mentions in his future other tweets that he doesn't know about pricing or anything else. So, but it was fun to get up and playing with it. And so if you guys are looking for some, PDF tools for our SDK, there's some good opportunity to play with this here. So thanks for sharing that, Tony. We appreciate it. Okay. So next up we have Ben Adele. He's been busy. A long weekend means more blog posts for Ben. And so this one follows up from our conversation last week. He wrote a blog post about the null coalescing operator and the safe navigation. And so Brad started telling him, was like, why don't you just use the Elvis? And so this sort of follows up from that. And so he was kind of surprised that Brad was right. I don't know why. Brad is right quite a lot, but he walked through the whole process and looked at doing using the safe navigator, something like this, and then basically replacing it with the null coalescing, the Elvis operator essentially. And for most times this works pretty good and saves you some headaches and hassle because of the way nulls work in ColdFusion. But he did mention if you're doing something where you're looking for functions or there's functions in your variable definition, then it doesn't work the same. So you still have to use the safe navigation for that. And so, as usual, nice and thorough. But yeah, a good set of code there and interesting to walk through. But so, Brad was right, but with exceptions. Okay.
Hey. Next, we have a video from Matt Clemente. He's doing more of his live streaming. And this time he was building a website uptime monitor with PipeDream.
Yeah, so he links to the live coding session here, which he basically tries to build that uptime monitor. And then basically gets most of it done, but he sort of logged it out nicely too. So he goes through the whole process, talks about PipeDream a little more, and sort of like the uptime monitor workflow. And, I like this. This is actually something we talked about on a project I was doing because we've used all these uptime monitors, but it'd be kind of nice to throw in more ColdFusion stats into some of these things too. And so it's kind of he walks through it. So it's pretty neat. Yeah, I really like seeing all these videos that he's been putting out. He's been pretty busy lately too, I'm sure, but he's starting to get back on the live videos, so it's good to see that.
Okay. Next one we have is another Ben post. This one was interesting about temporary upload files are duplicated and persisted when a request uses CF thread in
Yeah.
Lucee 5.36 was the version he tested here.
Yeah, and the interesting thing was for every thread, it duplicates that content. So if you upload a 1 meg file and then you thread off for different things, it'll actually keep multiple copies of it. And so he was talking about how, yeah, he had 160 gigabytes of storage disappear very quickly. Envision app obviously is dealing with images and design, so they use a lot of images. And yeah, so he has a nice video that goes with this too. But yeah, kind of interesting and kind of scary how that would happen too. I mean, I guess it makes sense that you got to have, a copy of the environment for each thread just so it's, thread safe, but the cleanup disappeared. So maybe that's...
Do we know if there was a ticket opened up from this? Because I know the end of Ben's post was kind of okay, so I guess I'll clean up old upload files to take care of this. But really, we don't want this happening in Lucee. So
yeah, I think Zach reached out and said, here, create an issue or something. So I don't know if there was actually an issue created or not.
Oh, there it is. Here we go. Okay, cool.
So, yep. But real thorough as usual, but really interesting. And yeah, I'm sure a lot of other people probably didn't even know this was happening, and their servers are filling up and they don't know why. So,
which is back to monitoring, a great reason to have monitoring on your disk space too.
Yeah, and that's actually, I've run into that before. DigitalOcean's great and I have block storage and everything else, but there's no easy way to look on through the control panel and see how much space I'm actually using. So if I got a 20 gig block, I don't know how much I'm using unless I go into the machine and then basically go in and figure out the file storage that way. So it's kind of weird. So wish it was better, but anyway, back to the news here. So Ben Adele was also working on some CF zip stuff. So he's been doing some zip stuff for a while actually, but this one goes back into performance. I'm trying to see if trying to actually skip over files that don't need to be zipped, if that will actually increase the speed or not. So using store or deflate compression methods, basically have different pros and cons. And so he was looking at the speed. I think he has a little graph somewhere down here. Oh, here's some results. So basically, if you don't compress them, in his example, basically it took about 400 milliseconds, but the file was obviously bigger. If you use default compression, it basically tries to compress everything, and even images, it would basically only be able to compress them a little bit. It took a little longer. And then if you had the mixed compression, which tried to figure out what were actually deflated, or what could be, zipped up, compressed more, and which ones couldn't be. And it took a little bit of time off, but it's hard to know, if it was really beneficial in this sort of small test.
So I'm probably going to be late to the party on this, but what is this timer tag he's using, and why have I not known about this? He's using the Lucee tag and script, it looks like, but there's this timer, a label, and a type, and that's what's creating this little outline thing for him with milliseconds. I have done a lot of dumb repetitive work to do the exact same thing, and this makes me really happy.
Yeah, I'm not sure actually. I mean, yeah, I've done the basic spitting out, milliseconds here and there, but I'm not sure either, to be honest. Brad, I'm sure knows. But yeah, CF timer.
CF timer. This is going to change my life, Gavin. That's all I have to say. I got to see if it's in all of the engines, but even just one is great. So thank you, Ben. That's not what you were trying to do, but thank you.
Yeah, I even see it in the Adobe support.
Yeah. Charlie says it's been around for a long, long time. Unfortunately, I have not. I came late.
CF7.
And I've never seen this. So this makes me happy.
Yeah, I mean, we have a lot of people doing all sorts of stuff, and maybe I wonder if there's a problem with it. Is it not, consistent or something? Because I know a lot of people don't use it, and yeah, if it's been around that long, you'd think they would know. Well, there we go.
Yeah.
We all learned something today. Thanks, Ben. Okay. The next up, we have the tweet from Julian Hallowell about the spreadsheet update. So we've talked about that a little bit earlier in the news. So I guess we're back to Ben again. But this one's actually pretty interesting because, so talking about proxying AWS S3 pre-sign URL uploads using Netlify functions. And the main reason is because a lot of people actually block Amazon S3. But wouldn't that like break the internet if somebody did that? I mean, so many things in the world run through Amazon. You'd think if your corporate network blocked Amazon, you'd probably not have an internet to look at.
Yeah, again, like I think you get by it because most people are proxying Amazon. And so they're blocking direct access, so you can't like download some sort of file that they don't want you to have, and they can whitelist the domains they do want.
Yeah, I guess so. It's just kind of funny because so much runs off Amazon, right? But
yeah.
And so this was interesting. It's a good one to have it when Brad's not on here because he's using Node with Netlify. But it's kind of neat. Basically, just essentially a microservice, right? Just a little tool that takes a URL. Basically, you add a URL into the endpoint and give that to the browser, and basically it goes through the little Node module, redirects. And the cool thing is it handles all the headers and everything. So when you get the response back, we'll just skip over the Node code here. But when you're uploading an image to the S3, it comes back. The server is Netlify, but you see all the Amazon headers and everything comes back good too. So pretty neat, and it's a pretty simple little script. I mean, there's obviously a lot of logging and everything in here, but it's not too difficult. And yeah, if you're having the same problem, you could use this file and just basically get around the S3 proxy problem. And it's just using a Lambda function on Netlify, which is pretty neat.
Yeah. All right, next up, we have a blog post from Will DeBruyne about CB validation and creating a better unique validator. So the unique validator is the idea that you have a database record that you want to make sure doesn't exist. That's your validation, true or false. And in like the 1.0 days of CB validation, you would do that using the CBORM library. That was really the only way that we gave. Here in this 2.0 days, we include one that does a SQL check for you. But as Will points out, it's pretty simple. There's definitely cases that it doesn't handle, and he shows how to extend that by writing his own validator. And honestly, that's my favorite part of this, because writing your own custom validator for CB validation is not that difficult, and it can clean up so much of your code because you can stick it into a component and reuse that validation rule across different handlers.
Yeah, and somewhere in here he says he uses it about 38 different places in his code, or so, no, 28 times. Yeah. So think about that. It's a lot of repetitive code, as he mentioned.
Yeah. I do agree with him. The one that's currently in CB validation is a bit simple. In fact, in like CFCasts, we have our own that does a bit more work. So Will, let's see a pull request. Let's get this in for everybody else too.
Yeah, that'd be really good. But yeah, we've done quite a few CB validations, and I've used them for some clients, and it's pretty cool to do. It's not that hard, like you said, and yeah, I mean they have these, basically an interface you follow. So this is sort of the same setup as a validation result, a target, a field, a target value, and a validation data. But I mean, you can look at something else and just change it up, make your own custom error messages, and away you go.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. I'm sure like we'll take the pattern of Will's here and augmenting the query execute call, but I've had a lot of fun in CFCasts making it so I could do some more QB stuff here and extend that at runtime. That's been really fun. So I don't think we want to require QB for CB validation, but if you are using both of them, you can do a lot of fun things.
Yep, and Will says there are plans to update CB validation as well, so thank you. And we actually have another post from him a little bit later about CB validation too. But next up, we have one from Pete Freitag, and this one's probably bitten a lot of people who are using command box with Lucee lately, and you'll see why, because you get this error message when you start up a new server that says no password set yet. And so it's a security update, and we understand it, and it tells you to basically use a password.txt file and put it in your Lucee server. But that's not the best way to do it with command box, and so he shows you how to do that. And so we're using cfconfig. So just like Grant was showing in the CFcast videos, this is a nice simple way to get a password set here. And so install command box cfconfig, and then use cfconfig set admin password equals whatever password you want, and then that'll set that up. And when command box fires up in your server, it reads your cfconfig file, pulls in all the variables, sets them all inside of Lucee, and away you go. So it makes it much easier than dealing with a password.txt file.
Awesome.
And of course, it's not just for passwords. You can use cfconfig for a lot of things, data sources and caching and everything else. So,
but the password is the gateway drug. That's how we hook you.
Yep, exactly. I know. I had a site that wasn't using command box, and I was like, "Oh my gosh, how do I do the password text thing?"
Yeah,
it's so painful. I think I put cfconfig on there anyway, just to get it updated.
okay. Which is a nice reminder that cfconfig is not like ColdBox specific, and you don't even need command box like running your server in production. Like it's just, it needs to know where your server home directory is, and then it can take care of stuff. So you can use it in any of your environments.
Yep, very cool. Okay, so next up we have a little tidbit of information from Ortus developers, a little shop we have, and so we now have a little Ninja developer collection. So if you're looking for some swag, you guys can get your little Ninja developer on a coffee mug or a hat or whatever you want. So just a little extra flair.
I had not seen this, and my two boys are obsessed with ninjas, and I feel like I need to figure out how to get these for them. They will go crazy.
Yeah.
And I can smile because it's like, yeah, that's Dad's work t-shirt.
Yeah, they're pretty cool. So, we just have a little fun with it and put out a few things. And again, that's another way you can help, support Ortus as well. So, and all of our open source products and services. Okay, so next up we have another one by Will. So we're talking about CB validation, validating a model or the request collection. And I admit he calls me out here, but wait, he's actually not just slamming me. Honest. So he basically said he discovered he could overwrite existing records when he tries to insert new ones, which sounds like a huge security vulnerability because he was using code from my ITB presentation. But he says, before blaming Gavin, let me confess, I changed the code a little. So, yeah. But yeah, this is something we often get, questions about, like, should we, validate our request collection or the incoming data, or should we just wait till we put it in the model and then, validate that? And some of the code is that in the presentation, it's based off some work that me and Eric have done with clients and also now, into the box. Well, I guess it's ColdBox Zero to Hero workshop. But we're using things like validate or fail and some cool little features there. And basically what we do is we actually validate that request context coming in, and then when we populate our model, we use that validated result to populate our model. And that way we're basically validating it both ways. And so that's kind of weird. Some people don't like that, but that way you make sure that you're not putting things into your model that shouldn't be there. And one of the things when you use the populate method, if you're not checking for what fields you actually want to take out of the RC scope, they could put something like a password in there or something that you weren't expecting. But if you're populating from the request scope, it could just throw it straight into your model. Now, if you save that model, you got a new password you weren't expecting. So just things like that. So that's why we usually like to validate in both places. But he walks through here and has a really good explanation, talk about all the different pieces. And yeah, it's definitely a good article. Definitely want to recommend reading that, and just don't blame me for everything, okay?
Yeah, I think for me, the hero of this post is that validate or fail method in CP validation. And again, the idea is not only so the normal validate method will return true or false. Well, I think it will return an object that you can check if it passed or not, along with errors, which is helpful. The validator fail, instead of returning an object, just throws an exception if there is a problem, and you can catch that, in on the error handler. You can do a try catch around it, anything that you need. But then what's returned is a struct with just the keys that you specified in validation. So it's a way of throwing away anything that came in to the request scope that you didn't want. And it has been very useful. Again, lets us save time by saying, yes, I trust this data now, throw it into a model and save it to the database instead of having to, do piece by piece. So.
Yep, and having the error bubble up will definitely save you a lot of repetitive code too. So.
Yes, that's very true.
Yeah.
So yeah, thanks for writing this up, Will. I'll be honest, I feel a little validated here because when I started here at Ortus, I was very much on the train of validating in the handlers the RC scope, and we've learned together that there's times that's great, and then there's times that we still want the model validation, and that's great too. So.
Well, when I first started at Ortus, you could only call the validate options inside of the model. Like,
that's true.
You couldn't actually. It was a kind of a pain to get to the validation inside of the RC scope, and there were certain things you couldn't do, and so yeah. So we definitely evolved over time. We definitely have that ways. So, but yeah. But as Will says in the chat, he never validated the RSkeep, only his models. But this is way better, and yeah, and like I said, we never trust the client. We never trust what they're giving us. So this just stops it getting in there, and yeah. Again, you can never be too careful, and if you make sure your code is elegant, you're not spending a page every time you're trying to validate something, then it makes life easier, right? It's not that hard to do that extra one line, and that can just double check.
Yeah.
So, cool. Well, with that, let's move on to find a job. So, this week we have a couple new jobs posted on the getcfmljobs.com website. So we have a ColdFusion and SQL developer in Hyderabad, Telangana in India. It was posted September 5th. So they're looking for a full-time job there. And then we have a full-time ColdFusion developer remote work in Calgary, Alberta, Canada. And that was posted on September 4th. So if you guys are looking for a job and those sound like a good one for you, get to cfmljobs.com and you can check those out. And as well as 18 other listings from dating back to basically July 1st. So they got about 18 positions from 13 companies across 9 locations in 5 countries. So pretty good. And also, Ortus is hiring. We're looking for a senior ColdFusion developer as well. So
that's right. So this position, the biggest restrictions are we need U.S. time zone availability, and you need to be either a U.S. citizen or resident or have a work visa. Other than that, you can see what we expect on the page. I like where we landed with the job listing. You're going to be doing a lot of helping clients come into Modern CFML, so we'd love to have you apply and come join our team.
Yep. And so we got that position up here. It's at ortussolutions.com/about-us/careers. You can find out more about it and then apply today. And it's always fun working with a bunch of good developers, and we treat you pretty well here at Ortus. That's why we're still here. So be good to have somebody else join the team. So if you're interested, please apply. Okay.
Cool.
Well, next up, we have a ForgeBox module of the week, and this one actually came up from an internal discussion we had. So
yeah, and I guess we'll reference the. I'm looking for the name of it. The library that made us think of it was Sticker from Presides DMS.
Yeah.
And Sticker and the module we're going to talk about, the ColdBox Asset Bag, kind of solve the same problems, which is managing JavaScript and CSS assets for a request. So if you're like us and you have a traditional multi-server page app where each request goes to the server, comes back with new data, you might have different JavaScript that needs to be delivered depending on the page. You're only sending down the Stripe library on the payment page, and you're only sending down data tables on the page with that on it, things like that. And both of these libraries let you, anywhere in your code, add something to the asset bag. So for the ColdBox asset bag, it's in the PRC scope, and anywhere in your handler, you can say, I need this file to be added. Additionally, there's some conventions that the ColdBox asset bag has, looking at the current request, the event and module, and it will look to see if there's a file, and if it exists, it will add it, which is pretty cool.
I didn't even know about that. That's cool.
I'm pretty sure Now you're making me wonder if I'm lying. Pretty sure that's true. If not, I guess I just got myself in the pull request. And then you can easily render all of the head and the footer bags in your layouts with just a single line.
Yep, and what I like about this too is we can, sort of prioritize them a little bit too, because, obviously if you're adding a library, the library needs to be above the other code, and so you can use it as well. So it's pretty well built. We've used it on quite a few projects, and yeah, it just saves a few problems. And actually, well, it really came in handy for me was when you have a view tag that's sort of encompassing a lot of code, and before you could just sort of spit stuff out, but Vue doesn't like it when you shove JavaScript out in the middle of its big old tag. So so this way you can basically put it all in the asset bag, and at the bottom of the layout you can spit it all out. So it's pretty handy.
So real-time follow-up, I did misspeak about the automatic thing, and now I'm remembering that was in the project that I worked on. So John Clausen, when you listen to this, you should bring that over into the ColdBox asset bag.
Yep. And so on ForgeBox, you can look through here. You can see how to add an asset. We got all the, add JavaScript to head, add inline JavaScript to head, etc. So we have all the functions here documented on the site, and pretty simple. But yeah, we offer quite a few different functions just to make it easy for you. So obviously it works JavaScript and CSS, and then rendering it out is pretty easy too. So you can just say render head or render footer. Pretty nice little module here. Again, not too hard to write yourself, but why do it when we've got a module that works pretty well? Okay. So next up, we have VS Code, hint, tip, and trick of the week.
So I have a story about this one. I was just reading through Twitter, which is usually where I find the new VS Code tips that I like to share. And somebody else had tweeted out like this problem. I'm using multiple cursors in VS Code, but then I have to click on all the individual ones where it was the second word and fix the typing. Like, this is super frustrating. And within like seconds, somebody had replied with this extension. It's got just a very descriptive name, multiple cursor case preserve. And yeah, the idea is whatever case the word is in that you've selected with a multiple cursor, it will keep on each of the different lines. So if one line it's all lowercase, it'll keep that. If one it's camel case and this is the capitalized portion, it'll keep that. All of those, title case, all caps, it's great. So it definitely saved me a lot of tedious clicking around and fixing silly capitalization errors.
Yeah, I've run into that too. So that's pretty neat. I was pretty impressed by this, and there are a couple of known issues, but that's basically an issue with the actual another issue that he has to sort of have somebody else solve. But also the undo redo works one change at a time, just so you know. But it looks pretty dang cool. Again, another simple little thing, but can save you hours and hours of frustration and headaches.
I'm gonna have to start. We had a phrase at one of my previous jobs with the data tables library to never doubt data tables. The idea was every time we needed to do something and we're like, can we make this work? Like, you could make it work, and usually there was somebody that made a plugin. I feel like we have to do that with VS Code nowadays. It's like, I didn't even have to look hard into this. And, 50% chance it's a built-in setting, and the other 50 is somebody's already made an extension for it.
Yeah, it's definitely a beauty of VS Code with all the support it has in the community, and it's only getting bigger and bigger. It's kind of crazy. And speaking of that too, I mean, I know we talked about the settings sync module a while back, and that's actually built in now. So the new version, I think, is finally dropped for real people, not insiders only. So you should have a settings option to be able to do your settings sync now, built into the VS Code. So you don't need that module, don't need that extension if you had it already.
Yeah, so if you open up your settings, I'm trying to remember, there is, where they put that. There's a sync like label right under the search bar in the top right that you can sign in with either Microsoft or a GitHub account and sync your settings that way.
Very cool. Okay, well, it's that time of the week now where we thank our Patreon supporters, because without them we wouldn't be able to make this podcast. and bring all of this, hopefully, good news and useful news for you. So, Eric, I think it's your turn. So I'll let you run over this.
Thank you to Ben Nadal, Brett DeLine, Carl Van Stetten, Charlie Earhart, Da Lee, Dan Card, Daniel Garcia, David Bellinger, Didier Lesnicki, Don Bellamy, Eric Hoffman, Gary Knight, Giancarlo Gomez, Jan Yannick, Jason Diger, Jeff McLean, Jeremy Adams, Jonas Erickson, Jordan Clark, Joseph Lamory, Kai Koenig, Laxma Teacher-Hadi, Mario Rodriguez, Matthew Clemente, Mingo Hagen, Scott Steinbeck, Sean Odin, Stephen Klotz, Synaptrix, and Yogesh Mathur. Thank you for sponsoring Ortus Solutions and this podcast.
Yeah, we really appreciate it. Without you guys, we wouldn't be able to do this. Everyone's got a budget, and even open source of us, we got to stick into our budget. So you're definitely making this better. And if you guys are interested, patreon.com/Ortus-Solutions, you can find out how you can support us as well. So thank you all, and it's really good to see some of the supporters in the live chat in here too. I see Mingo sending us big hearts, so we thank you too. So thanks everybody. Hope everyone enjoys their short week after the Labor Day holiday, if you were lucky enough to have it off, and we'll see you all next week.
See you guys.
Bye. Show notes for this episode can be found at cfmlnews.modernize.io, where you can also subscribe to your favorite podcast player like Spotify or iTunes. We also have the link to YouTube to find more videos just like this. The music used in this podcast is under a royalty-free license from Sound.com and Blue Tree Audio.